Have you ever been stranded in the middle of nowhere with your phone showing no signal, no lights for miles, and the chilling feeling that danger could come from anywhere? That was me, one cold desert night. And what happened next completely changed how I look at safety, protection, and even the people who guard roads we don't even think about. The story begins on what seemed like a perfectly ordinary evening. I was driving back from a late meeting in a small remote town. The desert around me was eerily silent, and the further I drove, the more isolated I felt. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, almost unnatural, like the world itself was holding its breath. The road stretched endlessly ahead of me, black asphalt cutting across miles of emptiness. My headlights sliced through the dark like two thin swords, showing me only a few dozen feet ahead at a time. My car rattled along, the hum of the engine the only companion in that vast open space. But then, without warning, it happened. My steering wheel jerked violently to one side and the car lurched. The unmistakable sound of rubber slapping the road filled my ears. My heart sank. I knew exactly what it was. A flat tire. I pulled the car over to the side of the road, gravel crunching under the tires as I slowed to a stop. At first, I told myself it wasn't a big deal. People get flat tires all the time. I'd changed one before, though never in the middle of the desert, alone, at night. Stepping out of the car, the desert air hit me like a wave, dry, cold, and biting. I shivered and turned on my small flashlight, its weak beam barely pushing back the surrounding darkness. The silence felt even heavier now. No houses, no streetlights, no passing cars. Just me, the broken-down vehicle, and miles of emptiness. I checked my phone instinctively, hoping for at least a single bar of service so I could call someone. But my stomach dropped when I saw the screen. No signal. Completely cut off. It wasn't just the inconvenience of being stuck. It was the realization of where I was. This part of the desert wasn't known for being safe at night. Stories of robberies, carjackings, and people disappearing out here weren't uncommon. Fear crept in, not from the tire itself, but from what could happen while I was stranded, helpless and invisible to the rest of the world. Minutes passed. I tried to focus on the tire, fumbling with the spare in the trunk, but my hands were shaky. Every sound from the desert, the rustle of the wind, the shifting of gravel under my own feet, felt amplified, like something or someone might emerge from the shadows at any moment. Time seemed to slow. What felt like hours was probably only 20 or 30 minutes. My flashlight flickered, the beam sputtering weakly. I paced back and forth, torn between trying to fix the tire and wondering if I should just stay inside the car and lock the doors. Then, just when the isolation was starting to feel unbearable, I heard it. A faint, low rumble in the distance. At first I thought I was imagining it, but the sound grew louder. Engines, multiple of them, rolling steadily through the night. My pulse quickened. Who could it be? My mind raced with possibilities. Was it locals? Strangers passing by? Out here, that could mean anything. Part of me wanted to duck down and hide, but another part of me knew that if I stayed visible by my car, at least they'd know I wasn't a threat. The sound grew closer, and soon beams of light appeared on the horizon, multiple headlights cutting through the desert darkness. The engines roared, steady and powerful, not like the random pickup trucks I was expecting. And then I saw it. The silhouettes. Boxy armored vehicles moving in a convoy. It took me only a second to recognize them. U.S. Army vehicles. At first, the sight was overwhelming. The headlights blinded me, forcing me to shield my eyes. The ground trembled faintly under the weight of the trucks. This wasn't just one or two vehicles, this was a patrol. I stood frozen, caught between relief and fear. Relief, because these weren't strangers or criminals. Fear, because I had no idea how they'd react to seeing someone stranded out here in the middle of the night. The convoy slowed as it approached. Engines idled low, and then one of the vehicles pulled over beside me. My heart pounded as I clutched my flashlight. The door opened, and a soldier stepped out, fully geared, helmet shining faintly in the light, weapon slung across his chest. For a split second, the world felt like it was holding its breath again, and then, in a calm, steady voice, he spoke the words that made every ounce of fear drain from my body. "Ma'am, are you okay?" That one simple question, "Ma'am, are you okay?" was like a switch. My panic, the pounding of my heart, the sharp edges of fear, all softened in an instant. The soldier's tone wasn't harsh or commanding. It was steady, professional, and reassuring. I nodded quickly, my voice shaky as I explained, "Flat tire. I tried, but I can't fix it alone. My phone's dead out here. No signal." He gave a small nod, then motioned to the others. What happened next was something I'll never forget. Within seconds, the convoy transformed into a scene of coordinated action. One soldier moved to the far side of the road and began directing what little traffic there was, though out here, traffic meant maybe one car every 30 minutes. Another soldier crouched by my car assessing the tire, while a third pulled tools from one of their vehicles. It was like watching a perfectly trained team respond to a crisis, except the crisis wasn't war or danger. It was me, a stranded traveler with a flat tire. The soldier nearest to me spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "We'll take care of this. Just step back for a minute, all right?" Reluctantly, I moved a few steps away, hugging my flashlight close. The cold desert air cut against my skin, but for the first time since the car had broken down, I felt warmth. Not physical warmth, but the kind that comes when you know you're not alone anymore. The soldier working on the tire moved quickly, his hands practiced and sure. He didn't fumble like I had. He knew exactly where to place the jack, how to crank it steadily, how to loosen the lug nuts without wasting a second. Another soldier stood close by, scanning the horizon, his eyes sharp even in the dark. It dawned on me that while one or two of them were helping me, the rest were still on alert, still protecting their convoy, and, in that moment, protecting me too. I stood silently, watching. The desert was still the desert, cold, quiet, and intimidating, but now there was this pocket of light and safety carved out by their presence. The hum of the convoy's engines filled the night air, drowning out the uneasy silence that had terrified me earlier. After only a few minutes, the soldier at the tire looked up and said, "Spares on. Just need to tighten everything." He worked with such efficiency that I almost laughed at myself for struggling so long earlier. In less time than it would have taken me to even find the right tools, they had the tire replaced and secured, but they didn't stop there. One of them walked around the car checking the other tires. Another opened the trunk, making sure the jack and tools were put back properly. It wasn't rushed. It was careful, thorough, almost like they wanted to be absolutely certain I'd be safe once I left. And then came the part that truly surprised me. As I stood there, still shaken, one of the soldiers approached with a small pack. He handed me a cold bottle of water and a flashlight, brighter and sturdier than the weak one I'd been clutching all night. "Here," he said, simply pressing them into my hands. "It's a long drive ahead. Better to be prepared." I stammered a thank you, my throat tight. The kindness in that gesture hit me harder than I expected. They weren't just fixing a flat tire, they were making sure I'd be okay after they left. When everything was finished, the soldier who had spoken first looked at me again. His face was mostly hidden under his helmet and gear, but his eyes carried a calm strength. "You're safe now," he said, his voice steady but almost gentle. "Just take it slow and get home." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you. Thank you so much." He gave a small smile, just enough to reassure me, then signaled to the others. With practiced precision, the soldiers packed up their tools, regrouped, and began climbing back into their vehicles. Engines roared back to life, headlights piercing the darkness once more. As I slid into the driver's seat of my car, my hands still trembling slightly, I felt the difference. Minutes earlier, I had been pacing in the cold, panicking, imagining every possible danger lurking in the shadows. Now, sitting behind the wheel with the spare tire firmly in place, a new flashlight in the passenger seat, and the echo of those words, "You're safe now," still ringing in my ears, I felt something I hadn't since the tire blew out. Relief. The convoy lingered just long enough to see me start the car. Then one by one they pulled back onto the road. Their massive vehicles rumbled into the night, taillights fading into the horizon until they became just tiny specks of red swallowed by darkness. For a long moment I sat there watching them disappear. A part of me wanted to follow, just to stay within the circle of safety they created. But I knew they had their own mission, their own reasons for patrolling a road like this in the first place. They weren't there for me, but somehow in that moment they had been exactly what I needed. I shifted the car into gear and began driving slowly, cautiously, the new spare tire humming against the pavement. My headlights stretched forward again, but this time the road didn't feel quite as lonely. As I drove into the night, I realized something important. Help doesn't always come in the way you expect. Sometimes it roars out of the dark on the back of armored trucks, carried by strangers in uniform who may never know the full weight of what they did for you. That night, the Army didn't just fix my flat tire, they restored a piece of my faith. As the convoy disappeared into the black horizon, I kept driving, slowly at first, then with more confidence as the miles passed beneath my wheels. The desert stretched endlessly around me, the same vast emptiness that had terrified me only an hour earlier. But it felt different now. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. The shadows weren't looming threats. Somehow that one encounter had transformed the night from a prison of fear into a space of quiet reflection. I gripped the steering wheel and let out a shaky laugh. It was absurd in a way. How close I'd come to breaking down completely, how powerless I'd felt, and how quickly it had changed. A flat tire, something so simple and routine, had exposed just how vulnerable we can be when stripped of our comforts. No signal, no lights, no help. And then, out of nowhere, help had come, wrapped in camouflage and discipline. The image of those soldiers lingered in my mind. The calm way they moved, the efficiency of their teamwork, the kindness tucked into their actions, even when they didn't have to give me anything more than a fixed tire. I remembered the weight of that flashlight in my hand, brighter than mine, sturdier than mine, given freely by someone who would never see me again. It made me think. These men and women live in that space between danger and safety every single day. For me, it was a one-off nightmare, a bad night I'd tell people about later. For them, it was routine. They patrol places no one else sees, travel roads most of us don't know exist, and remain alert in conditions that would rattle the average person to their core. As the miles rolled on, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those headlights behind me, guarding the road like silent watchmen. But the mirror only reflected darkness now. They were gone, back to their mission, to responsibilities that went far beyond helping one stranded traveler. Still, the memory stayed, and with it, a profound sense of gratitude. That night changed me in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just about fixing a flat tire. It was about realizing how fragile security really is. We live our lives believing we're in control of our schedules, our plans, even the little details like making it home on time. But in one sharp moment, control can vanish, leaving us exposed. Vulnerability strips away the illusion. And then, if you're lucky, someone steps in, someone trained, ready, and willing to protect, even if you don't know their name, even if you'll never see them again. I thought about what might have happened if that convoy hadn't come by, if those engines hadn't rumbled through the night at just the right time. Would I have managed the tire on my own? Maybe. Or maybe not. Maybe another car would have stopped. But who? A kind stranger? Or someone with darker intentions? Out there in that silence, the possibilities were endless, and not all of them were safe. The Army didn't just save me from a broken-down car. They saved me from the fear of the unknown, from the spiraling panic that comes when you realize you're completely alone. They gave me back my sense of safety in a moment when I had lost it entirely. And here's the part that struck me hardest. They didn't make me feel like a burden. They didn't rush. They didn't treat my problem as small compared to theirs. For them, helping was second nature, whether it was protecting a convoy or stopping to change a stranger's tire. I carried that thought with me long after I reached home. It became a reminder that protection often happens in silence, unnoticed. Most of us go about our daily lives without ever thinking about who patrols the roads we don't see, who stands watch while we sleep, who's prepared to step out of the darkness when we're at our most vulnerable. That night taught me that safety isn't just about locks on doors or lights in the streets. It's about people, ordinary individuals doing extraordinary things simply because it's what they're trained and willing to do. When I finally pulled into my driveway, exhaustion hit me. The house looked the same as it always did, quiet and familiar. But I wasn't the same. I had walked through fear, through isolation, through the edge of helplessness, and had been pulled back by strangers in uniform who asked for nothing in return. Lying in bed later, the memory replayed again and again. The headlights cutting through the night, the soldier's calm voice, the bottle of water pressed into my hands, the words, "You're safe now, just take it slow and get home." Those words stayed with me, not just for the drive, but for days, weeks, even months after. They weren't just instructions. They were a reminder. A reminder that sometimes we don't see the people protecting us, but they're there, watching, ready, prepared. And that, more than the fixed tire, was what truly saved me that night. So I'll leave you with this question. Have you ever had a moment when help arrived just when you needed it most? Maybe not from soldiers, but from anyone. A stranger, a friend, even someone you didn't expect. Share your story in the comments. Because sometimes the moments that change us the most aren't the big dramatic ones. They're the quiet ones, the ones where someone shows up just when we need them. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a reminder that even in the darkest moments, help can arrive.